Right, everyone, welcome to today's Brain Boost. Thanks for making it out. We're going to be talking about learning language. My name is Alexander. I'm from lots of places. It's a long story, and we don't need to get into it. But I do speak a few languages. Most of the languages I speak are self-taught, so I know a thing or two about learning language. When I taught myself various languages, it was not at university. I didn't have a private tutor. I didn't have a lot of resources. So I had to do it on a budget, and I had to do it in some cases with very minimal resources. And that gave rise to the understanding that you actually don't need a ton of resources. There's a lot of stuff on the internet, especially today, especially with AI tools, which I'll get into later. And the key to learning language well is to turn yourself into someone who's very skilled in the act of learning language, in the process of learning language. There are certain skills, certain things that if you get good at them, everything else will get easier. And this applies not to a particular language, but to learning languages as a whole. And it's something that you can extrapolate and apply more broadly beyond the realm of language learning. We've called today's Brain Boost Rosetta by the book because I'm going to give an example of how you can turn any book, any text, really any TV series, anything you like, in a language that you want to learn into the Rosetta Stone. A quick background for those who are not familiar with the term. The Rosetta Stone was a stone that was into which was carved a declaration in 3 languages in ancient Egypt. And because it was a fairly lengthy declaration, archaeologists, when they found it, were able to use that to decipher the ancient Egyptian language, which until that point had been extremely difficult to really make sense of. The hieroglyphics, you could infer certain things from hieroglyphs, but there were a lot of things that people really weren't clear on. Once this stone was found with the hieroglyphs and the intelliglyphs on Greek, the same message written 3 times over, that gave searchers the key to the language that they were trying to unlock. And the truth is that in today's world, especially even if you want to learn a really obscure language, if you can find something in that language that you're willing to listen to or read, or preferably both, over and over again, you can turn that into your very own Rosetta Stone. One of my cousins in Israel, didn't learn Spanish at school until I think the end of high school, but she watched Spanish soap operas, telenovelas, a lot, many hours a day, every day when she came home from school. And due to that exposure, she became a Spanish speaker, and she's fluent today. Then she formalized it at school. So let's get started with a breakdown of language. Actually, I should probably use the clicker. Let me double check that. Okay, cool. So language. I want to break it down, keep it really simple. Language is talking, reading, writing, listening. That's really the simplest and most effective breakdown. You can break down even further into passive and active activities. So what do we mean by that? Get back to that. So I'll get to the matrix in a sec. There's talking. That's active, right? Because you're talking, you're producing language. There's writing. That's also active because, again, you're producing the language in written form. There's listening. That's passive. And there's reading, which is passive. Those are the 4 activities of language. All language, every language, all language around the world can be boiled down to those 4 activities. I want to touch briefly on grammar versus vocabulary. Now, grammar is actually a misnomer. It's really meta-language, but if I use meta-language, most people won't really get it. So grammar, right? If you learned a language at school, there was the grammar, which is all these rules, and then there's vocabulary, which is what you actually want most of the time. That is, how do I say the thing I want to say in the language that I'm learning? And for a lot of people, grammar is this encumbrance, this inconvenience of, oh, it's all these things I have to learn, but I don't really care about those things. I just want to know, how do I say the things that I want to say? But the truth is that grammar is the key to vocabulary. If you learn the grammar intentionally, if you understand, if you develop an understanding of what we're doing when you learn the grammar, and you can see how it'll translate, then learning grammar in the right way turns your brain into a kind of filing in progress. It's a place where words can go. And I'll give you a practical example of how learning grammar actually facilitates learning vocabulary. We'll take the Spanish verb hablar, right? Everyone's hablar. No hablo español. ¿Hablas español? No hablo español. Right? Now, did you hear that there's a difference? Hablo, hablas. What's the difference? Well, Spanish is a language that has conjugation, that is, the verb changes. We don't really have that anymore in the English language, except for I go, he goes up. So we do have the remnant of conjugation. But in most European languages, there are many forms across the different tenses. So I go, I went, I will go, you go, we go. And so what we get is these very large tables that look very scary. But they all follow a very consistent pattern for the most part. Yes, I know there are irregular verbs, but even irregular verbs conform for the most part to their pattern. They say, wow, I have to learn a lot of this. I've got to learn, however many forms these are, and there are more of them. And how am I going to learn all of these distinct pieces of information for every single verb? It will take me forever. But the fact is that once you learn the pattern, you only really need to learn, for example, a few forms. And from those forms, you can infer the rest of it. So you learn the pattern, and then for each new verb that you learn, if you understand this aspect of the grammar, you don't have to learn, 20 or 30 different forms if you know that this is a verb that conforms to those patterns. So for hablar, if I know nothing about the verb hablar, except that it's hablar infinitive, that is to talk, and I know that when I say you talk to hablas, and he, el habla, then everything else will fall into place. So you see, grammar isn't just this arbitrary set of rules that you have to learn in order to pass the test. If you understand that the more you understand the grammar, the faster you will learn new words, it's going to speed up your language. I'll give you an example. Portuguese. Let's say Portuguese, how do you say, what's the equivalent of hablar?
Falar.
Falar. Okay, so it's AR at the end.
Yeah.
All right. And if is it a regular verb?
It's regular.
Regular verb. Okay, falar, tu. If you use tu for being falas.
Yeah.
El, fala. Nos, like we, falamos.
Yeah.
If you use vos, I don't know if you do, it would be faláis.
Yes.
Okay, yes, they, fala. Okay, I don't speak Portuguese. But I have an appreciation of that basic aspect of grammar, and so that allows me to do a little exploratory work, even in a language I don't speak. All right, moving on. Now, AI is the pudding of the month, and I'm giving an example here. I take the verb hablar, and I ask ChatGPT, what forms of that verb do I really need to know in order to reliably infer all the other forms? That is, if I've learned the verb table, can I say, I know these things? And what it said to me is, if you know basically these 3 or 4 distinct pieces of information, you can work out the rest. We can reliably guess the rest. Now, there's a detail I want to pick up on here, which holds a lot of people back when they're learning a new language, which is they're afraid they're going to sound dumb or it's not going to sound right. Let's say you learn a new word and you try to use it in conversation. It turns out that it's an unusual word, an irregular word, and you get it wrong. The native speaker that you're talking to is going to be okay with it. If you make a predictable mistake, that is still easy enough for that person to, okay, so he doesn't know that this is an irregular verb, doesn't know that this is an unusual word. like buenos dias, right? Buenos dias. Dia with an A sounds like it's feminine. It's actually masculine. I got corrected on that because there was a Spanish grammar word, and I said buenas dias, not buenos dias. So he said, no, actually, dia looks like it's a feminine word. It's actually a masculine word. Was it a problem? Yeah, he told me, and then there's the correction. So as long as you're working in a more or less reliable way when you're trying to speak a language, most of the time, when I say most of the time, like 99% of the time, people will be okay with it. And so we are generally our worst critics. Okay. When you want to learn vocabulary, there's the concept of spaced repetition, and there are lots and lots of tools out there. There are flashcards, there are, you name it. You can do the research, do a quick Google search or an AI, whatever, and you will come across more tools to learn vocabulary than you can work a stick at. They're not bad, but what I want to show you shortly is here's an alternative way which I find more engaging, and I've never had any trouble with vocabulary. Back to skills. Okay, simple matrix. Each skill is either active or passive, and there's either time pressure or there's not time pressure. So, talking is obviously the hardest. Talking is the hardest. I've heard throughout the years, more times I can count, someone will say, I can't really talk, but if someone talks to me, I understand more than I can talk. That's not special, that's just your brain. That's just the normal human brain. It's much easier to understand in listening than to produce the language. Why? Because it's passive rather than active. It's easier to write than it is to talk because you've got time. You're not under time pressure. What that means is if you want to get good at language, this is where you need to focus your efforts. You do about 4 times as much of this as these other things. What's the catch? What's the problem? Generally, you can listen to things all day long. You can write, and I put an asterisk there because when I say write, I mean writing by hand without some kind of autocomplete to assistance. Okay. But assuming that you're actually writing with pen and paper, writing is active. If you're writing with autocomplete or whatever, not very active. And of course, reading is the most passive. So there are unlimited materials for passive learning, for reading, for writing, to a certain extent, listening. But reading, we want to talk. If we want to get good at the language, we have to talk. Okay? And it's important to accept the fact that talking is a performance. Even if you talk in your native language, it's still a performance. You're just not aware of it. But you become hyper aware of it when you're trying to talk in another language, especially one that you're learning. Chris, when you traveled overseas and you spoke in Korea, you're a native speaker. But you don't usually get to speak to others, do you? So when you were there, did it feel like there was an element of being on stage?
Oh yeah, I was embarrassed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're conscious of it. It's only maybe if you're in a bilingual household and you switch between languages that you're not really conscious of it. But it's a fact, and it's a fact that we have to accept. Neurologically, in your own brain, there's no difference between being an actor on stage, performing music, playing sports. All of those things, neurologically, are the same as just asking somebody for directions at a train station in another language. Okay? You are on stage, and for as long as you learn that language, maybe for the rest of your life, every time you try to say something, even, excuse me, where can I buy a ticket? It's a performance. So don't try to run away from it, embrace it. Many years ago, I wanted to learn, I wanted to learn a language, and I didn't have the option. So I go to a tutor, I didn't have anyone to talk to in the language I wanted to learn. So I thought, I've got the text, and I can read the text, but reading it silently is not as good as reading it out loud. So I practiced reading the same text over and over again out loud. And then I thought, I don't really want to give me feedback, but I can give myself feedback. So with this little device over here that we all have, you have a voice recorder, you have a video recorder, right? And so you can record yourself reading the text out loud. Then you can play it back and you can listen to yourself. And when you do that for the first time, you're going to, assuming you even get through the first recording, you're going to listen to yourself and think, that sounds true. So what do? You do it again and again and again until you get to the point where you don't think that you sound that. If you keep at it, you'll get there. For bonus points, you can put it on YouTube and get comments. But the point is that you can simulate all of the pressure of being in conversation, actually much greater pressure than you would be under when you're conversing with someone in your target language, by recording yourself and listening to yourself over and over again. Now, at school, there's certainly fallacies that we inherit from our school learning, one of which is that the text has to be unfamiliar, otherwise it's cheating. It's not. It's not cheating. You can read the same text, the same paragraph over and over again, and it's not cheating because you're going to get more out of it every single time. Even if it's a language that you're pretty up to speed. Nowadays, we have ChatGPT. Okay? There's voice mode even in the free form. And you can have it, you can say to it, I want to speak in another language, and it'll switch to that language. There are actually much better AI language chatbots out there. The ChatGPT is free and it's a good start. I've tried it out with various languages. And if you want to get a bit of conversation practice in, especially even if you give yourself a script, get yourself started, you can talk to a robot. Your robot will talk back to you. Because sometimes, if you think about it from daily work, you've got an idea that you want to process, and you'll maybe pull a colleague in and say, I need you as a soundboard. You don't actually need that person to respond. Maybe you just need an audience. Maybe you just need someone to talk to so you don't feel like you're talking into the void. If you've got nothing but void, then the robot can actually help. All right. Last little hack. Let's say you've got a text, you read it, you've been reading it, you've been practicing, and then but you don't get an awful lot of vocabulary out of it. You can have your friend, Mr. ChatGPT, generate more vocab for you. You can have it take that text and turn it into a lexicon. And then from there, you can say, if it has the word, I don't know, sun in it, then give me the word for moon and stars, and you can expand the vocabulary. Use that text that you're starting from, and then you can expand from there. All right. What was I going to say? Oh, and then here's the exact example. I generated a vocabulary, and that's what it did. I gave it a little bit of text, and it went through, and it just started generating conversation terribly well. But basically, Spanish with the definition, and English, and so forth. And head presto, it gives me a ready-made vocabulary to study. So let's say you want to start a new text and you want to stimulate yourself, because the idea is to come at it from various angles. So maybe it's a brand new text, give it to the AI, it gives you a lexicon, you study the vocabulary, then you engage with the text. Or you engage with the text fresh and try to make as much sense of it as you can. Then you go and make a vocabulary and come back to it. And you go over and over again, you cycle through all the various options, because there are a lot of options. Now, finally, on to the audience participation, because I'm getting tired of listening to myself talk. So Little Prince is my Rosetta Stone. It's not the only Rosetta Stone. It could be any text you like. In fact, if I got something from IKEA, usually a European product, it's got the same instructions in about 10 different languages. So my wife has just learned that before I assemble anything, I'm going to go through and read all of the instructions out loud in all of the languages I know, most of which are European. So it's going to be a while. But The Little Prince is wonderful for many reasons. I've read The Little Prince to my children in Hebrew. My wife has read it in English. And then for added entertainment, I read it to my girls in French and Italian and German and Spanish as well. I left off some of the other languages. But you can get it in English, you can get it in, of course, in French and it's the original, you can get it in Spanish, you can get it in Korean, you can get it in Hebrew, you can get it even in really obscure dialects. It's available if you look hard enough. And so what we're going to do, I'm going to see whom I can corral into a little science, a little demonstration. So here's a little snippet of dialogue from The Little Prince. The Little Prince goes and visits a little planet where there's a street lamplighter. So who'd like to read English with me? I'll do the narrator and someone can be either the Little Prince or the lamplighter. Anyone for English reading? Going once, going twice? Sure. All right, so can you read from me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do narrator. Do you want to be the Little Prince or the writer? Okay, they'll be the Prince, cool. So when he arrived on the planet, he respectfully saluted the lamplighter.
Good morning. Why have you just that line?
Those are the orders, replied the lamplighter. Good morning.
What are the orders?
The orders are that I put out my lamp. Good evening. And he lighted his lamp again.
But why have you just lightened it again?
Those are the orders, replied the lamplighter.
I do not understand.
Said the little prince. There's nothing to understand, said the lamplighter. Orders are orders. Good morning. All right. Let's give it a go in Spanish. Any takers for Spanish? So exactly the same text. Now you have the context. Now you know basically what it is. Don't worry. This isn't about who's the best in Spanish. Anyone want to give it a go?
No, you're opposite.
Okay.
No,
I'll take Prince because I'll pull you in later.
Okay.
Okay, so you do the Prince. So now again, I'm not a Spanish speaker. I've been reading in Spanish, so it's also not, the most familiar language for me. But I'll try. Al entrar al planeta Salvador respetuosamente al farolero.
¿Por qué acabas de apagar tu farola?
Es la consigna. Buenos días.
¿Qué es la consigna?
Apagar mi farola. Buenas noches. Y la encendió de nuevo.
Pero ¿por qué la volviste a encender?
Es la consigna.
No entiendo.
No hay other things in there. La consigna es la consigna. Buenos días. Y apagó tu farol. Well done, so close. Good work, Chris. Thank you very much. All right, let's try it in Portuguese. Okay, again, Portuguese, not my language at all, never read in Portuguese. But I will give it a go. So I'm actually going to ask you to give me feedback. If I'm mispronouncing something, tell me. Because it's important to develop that resilience. We get very anxious about making mistakes and mispronouncing things, but I want you to call me out. Okay? But I'll make it a little bit easier. You can be the narrator and the lamplighter. I'll be the little prince this time. Okay?
When ran the planeta London Toy, Cultural Mostly Programming. Are you the prince?
¿Por qué você acabou de desligar-se ao poste de luz?
I was Logan. What'd you?
Que pessoal?
Desligue seu watch de luz. Boa noite. E eles não viu.
Mas por que você ligou novamente?
I was Logan.
Eu não entendo.
Não nada pra entender. I was Logan. What'd you? E eles desligou o watch de luz.
Thank you. All right. Now I'll throw a bit of heat ring.
Oh, he was in me, right?
Yes, that's you.
I called Prince.
Okay, so I'll be narrator, I'll be lamplighter. Okay, so there's no narrator here, I just stripped it down. So you are the princess who starts.
Bokerto, Lama Kibicha and Malpanas.
Zakuda, look at Tov.
Maabuta.
Havkuda, let's not to the banas. End of Tov.
Avalarishun, Pedlapta, and Alvernas.
So Kuda.
Animo Medan.
Emalavi, Kudas of Kuda. Boketo.